What's going on, guys? First off, what's up with that starting soon screen, though, baby? I know y'all saw that. You know what I'm saying? Been working on it behind the scenes. A little bit of ingenuity, a little bit of help from other areas. But yeah, upgrading here at the W.A.D.E concept. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. My hair's not what we're here to talk about. Mind you, I understand it's a big shock for everybody. I got the buzz cut. I'm taking it back to my roots. This is the haircut I used to have when I was a kid for 15 years, 16 years. I kind of like it. It's less maintenance. But nonetheless, we are here. Welcome in everyone to the W.A.D.E Concept Podcast. My name is Wade. I'm your host as always. And today and any other day, we are debating everything. And I think what I've lost in the last couple times I've been on here is I haven't really been as assertive and as energetic as I normally am. I'm a little tired from doing this and that. Doesn't matter. Today I got the cold brew that Kelsey, unfortunately I stole from Kelsey. So I will be paying her back. We are honorable here at the W.A.D.E Concept. We are honorable gentlemen and ladies. So we do not steal, we just borrow and then replace. Drake always said, don't ask permission, just ask forgiveness. So Kelsey, forgive me. Anyway, today you guys are going to have to forgive me because I'm too excited about what the news that has just come out yesterday and, continues to kind of circulate today. And guys, you know what we do here. We're just going to jump right into it. So our biggest story of the day, the biggest news story that's happened in the last couple of weeks. By the way, there's so much stuff happening in the next month and a half that it's so hard to get up for every single thing and remember all the stuff that's going on. During the podcast today, we're going to go through a couple of the fight cards coming up just so I can remind you guys and myself how many huge fight cards we have in just the month of just the month of September alone. September is so jam-packed with massive-ass fights that I have to remind myself that there's huge fights every single weekend, just banger after banger after banger. Oh, by the way, my boy Tuck had to I have to do something for him real quick. He asked me to do this, so it has no context as to what I'm about to do. But Tuck, if you're watching, this one's for you, big dog. Bang! All right. Anyway, only two people in the world will get that. That's Tuck and AJ. But anyway, we have a huge month of September coming up, and we're going to go through it all. But first, we're going to start out with what I found out yesterday, just like the rest of us found out in the MMA community, and that is the massive fight that's coming up in November. Just booked yesterday. There's a lot of rumors going around for a couple of weeks, kind of a full-on month, about Darren Till and Kelvin Gastelum. A lot of people didn't want to see the fight. A lot of people did want to see the fight. They just booked it. Darren Till moving up his middleweight debut will be against the number one, or I guess two in this case, the number 2 contender in the world at middleweight, Kelvin Gastelum. You guys know that have been here with me in the podcast. I'm a huge Darren Till fan. He's had a rough couple of fights, his last two, but nonetheless, a huge Darren Till fan. And because I'm such a big fan, I'm kind of conflicted while I have to let you guys know that this is a big fight for both gentlemen. I mean, for Kelvin, it's a huge fight to keep him in the title picture, right? Because after that Adesanya and Whitaker fight, there's Paulo Costa, there's Kelvin Gastelum, and it looks like now, possibly, there's Darren Till. All going to be vying for that next title shot. Costa's probably going to get the shot based off the performance he just put in. But there's a big kind of jumbled mess right there at the top, and Kelvin Gastelum is just trying to stay afloat there. And what better way to do it than to welcome Darren Till to the middleweight division? Now, the problem that a lot of people are having, and kind of why I'm conflicted, and I don't blame people for having this problem. By the way, check the Corgi shirt today, ladies and gentlemen. You guys want some quality shirts? GameStop's got them. This isn't like a plug or anything, but this shirt, come on now. Anyway, the biggest kind of confliction that you have as a fan here is you just watch Darren Till get knocked out twice. Got knocked out by Jorge Masvidal. Got beat by Tyron Woodley TKO/choke. You don't want to see him go into another high-level fight when Dana readily admitted that they had probably pushed him too early, and then, have some time off, and then maybe get him, a couple of fights under his belt to get back that experience, and then, see where he goes. But not only are they not doing that, they're putting him at the top of the division in the next division up. Now, a lot of people have said Darren should have moved up a long time ago. I'd be one of those people. I thought Darren Till should have moved up to middleweight a long time ago. The guy walks around, to me, eyeball test. I don't know. I'm not in his camp. I'm not his nutritionist. I don't know. But the eyeball test says that Darren Till's around 200 to 210 pounds as a normal human being. When he's not walking around trying to cut weight, he's about, I would say, 205, 210. That would, with my very elementary math in the public school system, would allow me to deduct that he's either cutting 35 to 40 pounds to make it to 170. That's insane. That is insane. I can't stand weight cutting. You guys know I can't stand weight cutting. That's on another level. Darren Till is damn near killing himself to make weight for a fight. I don't like it. I don't think there's any place in the sport for it. It'll continue to happen. It is what it is. But I think this is a good move to move to middleweight. But I don't necessarily know. The only reason the UFC gave him the fight, according to Dana White last night in his scrum, he said that Darren Till wanted that fight specifically. He wanted that fight. So, big ups to Darren Till for putting himself right back in there, right at the top of the division, in the next division up. And the way that these, when you reclassify your weight, it's almost like a clean slate. Like what happened at 170 doesn't really matter anymore. This is a new, fresh start for Darren Till. And, that's a good and bad thing, because say Kelvin Gastelum gets one up on him and wins the fight, then what do you do with Darren Till? Because now he's not successful in his debut, kind of the Luke Rockhold effect, right? And Darren's so much younger, he's got so much more time in the game. But Luke Rockhold moves up to 205. Everybody's talking about how he's going to be the heir apparent to challenge John Jones, and the Luke Rockhold of old is still in people's minds, and he gets up there, and Jan Blachowicz says, "Ha, eat this left hook, and I'm going to bounce your head off the floor 3 or 4 times." And that's not disrespect to Luke Rockhold. That's just what happened. And now you're kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs with Luke and saying, well, what does he do next? Does he even fight anymore? Should he just go model? Should he do some other stuff outside of the cage? Because his last couple of fights have not been great. The same deficiencies have shown. So my whole thing is, if Darren Till is moving up, great, wonderful. Go get your money. Go fight it at a healthier weight. But if the same deficiencies are there, if the same, problems that you're having where the kind of the stand up straight chin back stance and walking forward like the gorilla he is, and he gets clipped by something, or you got to remember, Kelvin Gastelum, a very technical sound boxer. Darren Till's going to have the reach on a lot of people, but he had the reach on Jorge Masvidal, and Jorge KO'd him flat with the left hand. So it's tough. It's very tough to see, if this is a good or bad move. I like it as a fight fan because I love big fights. This is most certainly a big fight. And not only that, but it's on a card that's already stacked and looking to stack even more. And I don't know if there's any more of a better segue than that, folks, because we're going to talk about the UFC 244 card, and I'm actually going to give you guys a look at it. It's something I have been looking at for a little bit. I wanted to kind of, we're kind of going to go back and forth too. We're going to bounce around a little bit, because I want to show you guys not only this card, but I want to show you all the cards coming up. But just because we're talking about this one, I want to go ahead and show you this. So there's only 2 fights that have been announced right now, as of right now. And that is, it's the first time I'm doing this. See if it works. That's Corey Anderson, Johnny Walker. A huge, huge fight. Huge implications in the light heavyweight division. And obviously Johnny Walker, guy on my right here, is rising like a superstar. And you have Corey Anderson here on the left, who has been clamoring for a John Jones fight, going to John Jones press events, going to meet and greets, trying to get at John Jones. So both these guys are really looking to take that next step into contention for the light heavyweight title. And the way John's fighting and how active he's been recently, this is a huge fight. A lot of people, myself included, see some problems in matchups with a guy like Johnny Walker and John Jones. It's almost like a mirror match. I don't know how good Johnny Walker's wrestling is, or how good his fight IQ is because he's such a young guy and he's all over the place and he's wild and he throws crazy techniques. He hurts himself after fights doing the worm. Like, I don't know exactly where his, mental and physical skills meet and how they would be able to match up against Jon Jones. But physically, and the way you watch his creativity and his explosiveness in the cage, he is a problem for anybody. And not only that, but Jon Jones usually holds a reach advantage over a lot of opponents. As you can see down here, that's an 82-inch reach. Now, I think Jon has like an 84.5, so he would still hold a little bit of an advantage. But that's almost a mirror match. 6'3", 82. Jon Jones is 6'4" with an 84. That would be a huge matchup in the future if Johnny Walker is to get by this test. Now, not only that, but we're looking at a different matchup as well. Again, another huge matchup. We have Derek Lewis and Blagoy. I'm mispronouncing. I've tried this off camera. Ivanov. Again, a huge matchup in the heavyweight division. Ivanov just got another win to make him 18-2. Derek Lewis been out for a little bit. Want to see him come back and do well. But again, these are monster matchups. And now we include these two fights with the Darren Till, Kelvin Gastelum fight and the rumored, I should say, with a very cautious approach, just judging off of, what we've seen lately with title matchups. Rumored matchup between Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. We're looking at four huge fights on that card in Madison Square Garden. Now, there's also rumors that Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal could headline that card. Or could co-main that card. I don't see them as a co-main to anybody because that fight is money. That fight is more popular right now than Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington is. That could just be my opinion, but it seems as the public's opinion goes that would be the more interesting fight or the more sought-after fight. I don't know about actually between the cage what will happen, but all indications point to Nate and Jorge being the monster fight at 170 right now. That being said, regardless what they do with that, if they co-main or if they find something else for the co and then have Kamaru and Colby fighting, that is a huge card. And to add the Darren Till and Kelvin Gastelum fight with implications, because at that point we'll know what's happening in the middleweight division, because that fight is October 5th for Adesanya and Whitaker. So by that point we'll know who the champ is and who's going to have the next shot and kind of how that falls into place. Those two guys will be fighting for that next number one contender's opportunity right after the Costa and whoever wins the Adesanya Whitaker fight. Or if there's a rematch, obviously, you never really know, but we're starting to see some building blocks go into place here. So again, that was a huge bombshell Brett Okamoto dropped at ESPN yesterday. But right after that news came out, we got, I won't say bigger news, but physically we got some bigger news. This is somebody that as crazy as it sounds, used to fight at 170 and is now coming back to fight at heavyweight. Of course, we're talking about Anthony Rumble Johnson, the man with stones in his hands, pure athleticism, a wrestling freak from back in the day, but then became an absolute destroyer with his hands, packs a ton of power. The last time we saw him was a couple of years ago in his loss to DC at light heavyweight, took some time off, and now, as reported by Brett Okamoto, we're going to see Anthony Johnson return, and it looks like they want to be early next year sometime, as according to his manager. That's Ali Abdelaziz, who you guys have heard me talk about before. But, Ali said that Rumble wants to come back in 2020, and he wants to come back at heavyweight. And Rumble even alluded to this, I think, back last month. He said he would love to come back and fight at heavyweight, but only if he could fight Jon Jones at heavyweight. And that's interesting to me, because he said he wanted to fight the best before his career was done. And, more power to the guy. Of course you want to fight the best. You want to fight Jon Jones at heavyweight because I guess that's where Rumble is now. And if you've seen Rumble's Instagram, the guy looks like an absolute freak these days. I think he's been in the weight room. He's training with some gym company. He's got his own gym. He looks like he always has, but he just looks like his body just keeps getting bigger. I don't understand it. He used to fight at 170, guys. I don't know how he made it there. But yeah, he said he wants to fight John Jones at some point at heavyweight. That would be why he came back. At least that's what he said a couple of months ago. And Rumble's not young. Rumble's 35. And granted, the heavyweight division, you don't have to be young. 35 at heavyweight is fairly young. But he's got a lot of fights under his belt. Plus, you're talking about we always talk about this with the layoff. And for the most part, the layoff is a huge deal for guys, especially, when you come back at a different weight class. Now, Nate, obviously being an outlier, some other people being outliers, but for the most part, when you take a layoff that's, 2 to 3 years, that's going to affect your performance in the cage. Now, we'll see. At heavyweight, you don't necessarily have to possess the same technique as you would in the lower weight classes, but the power is usually the last thing to go, as the old folktales say, and especially at heavyweight. Your speed goes. Sometimes your technique is not as quick as it used to be, but your power will stay for a longer period of time. So it's very interesting, and it's very exciting to have Rumble back, because to watch this guy fight, it's like watching a high-speed impact NASCAR race where things are just calamity left and right. Things are calm. Everybody's going beside each other. AJ, what's up, big dog? German, what it is? What's up, baby? Thanks, guys, for being in. But you're watching a NASCAR race, and this is the only thing I can kind of allude it to. Everybody's driving in sync, nice and smooth, and then out of nowhere, someone turns left or someone turns right on a left-hand turn or barely clips the edge, and everything is in complete disarray and destruction. Anthony Johnson, when he fights, the fight's going well, moving correctly. He throws a right hand, and it seems like he damn near kills people. His right hands, his uppercuts, what he threw an uppercut, and I think it was against Gustafsson in Sweden. Rumble throws an uppercut and just sits him down in his hometown. One punch, show's over. We're going home. Now, a lot of heavyweights can do that. Francis can do that. Derek Lewis can do that. Stipe can do that. A lot of heavyweights can. But the explosiveness that Rumble provides in a short amount of a short space, it's very dangerous. Could you guys imagine, by the way, say Rumble comes back and that it looks like they want him to fight Junior Dos Santos or Alistair Overeem. Say this man comes back and beats one of those guys, and Francis still can't find a fight because they're looking to do the retirement or the rematch for possibly retired Daniel Cormier and Stipe. If you give him Anthony Johnson, give me Anthony Johnson and Francis Ngannou today. I want it. I want it now. So give it to me. If he wins his next fight and if Francis doesn't have anything going on. Francis rightfully should get a shot at that title, if not for the rematch between DC and Stipe. But if Francis doesn't have anything going on and you got a fresh off a knockout of JDS or Alistair Overeem, Rumble Johnson, I'm just saying, USADA, turn your head and look the other way. We're going to let these two monsters go at it. First one to have their head decapitated loses. By first round win by decapitation for either guy. I don't know. I have no idea. But both those guys possess that kind of power. And I want to see it right now. German says I can do that. Yeah. Okay, brother. Yeah, that's a fight that's insane. I can't wait to see what they do with Rumble. If they give him JDS and Alistair, JDS or Alistair, those are no cupcakes either. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about Alistair and JDS and their legendary status, but Rumble being back is good for business. It is phenomenal for their business. So congrats to him, and we'll see. I think they're trying to plan for early 2020. So I'm guessing maybe March or February, possibly April. But yeah. What an amazing announcement, again, by Brett Okamoto. Give the guy some credit, man. He's breaking news left and right. Him and Ariel are killers in this game. But another thing I wanted to show you guys, and something we're going to talk about today is, well, we'll start with the Tuesday Night Contender Series, and then we'll move on to the cards that we have coming up. But did you guys watch Tuesday Night Contender Series this season? Like any of the episodes? I watched pretty much every episode. I haven't watched last night's yet, so I got to see highlights and stuff, but I'm going to go back after the podcast, maybe after I get off work later, and we're going to watch the entire thing. But this Tuesday Night Contender Series is one of the most captivating and interesting parts of ESPN Plus's kind of whole MMA package. Beyond Fight Pass, which I think they're revamping right now, but Fight Pass is another one. Amazing video library, amazing content on there. But beyond that, you have this Tuesday Night Contender Series. And if you guys are big fight fans growing up, I think it was on NBC. It was like the Contender or something like that. It was a boxing series. And this is, a less reality TV kind of Hollywooded up version of that. This is real life stories. The UFC finds these guys that are massive prospects that they think at some point can either challenge for or be tops in their division. They bring them in, they face them off, they square them up, and they go. And obviously, in your performance, you're looking to impress the big boss man, Dana White. That is the goal. You impress him, you get a win, you hopefully get a contract. It's a simple premise. It's very simple. But the stories behind what they're doing is so well done by their production team and so amazing just on a personal level. You got guys that are, training with superstars. There's a guy that just won that's one of Stipe's training partners. You got guys that are local to my area. There's a guy that goes to the gym I go to that was just on the show, and unfortunately he didn't come out with a W, but it hits home for everybody, because if you can see one of those guys come from nothing, and he's where you're from, looks just like you, talks just like you, lives in the same area, and he goes from nothing to this Contender Series to in the UFC, not only are you gaining exposure for these individuals, but you're also telling a story of rags to riches in a way that's hard to tell on reality TV without some sort of Hollywood glitz and glamour factor. This is a grassroots telling of that story. And I love it. I think it's the most entertaining, 2 hours of ESPN Plus content outside of the E6, or not E60, the details with DC, and obviously the fight cards themselves. This right here tells, like I said, a more personal story of guys that you never heard of and girls you never heard of, and how they're getting their chances in the UFC. And so last night, and the reason I wanted to talk about it, last night was their last episode of this season. And in their media scrum, Dana White had talked about, doing possibly a second round for this season, and he just couldn't do it because the talent pool wasn't there. And I wondered if that's the real answer, or if the UFC is actually going to be, stopping the Contender Series, which I hope not. I don't have any information. This is wild speculation, but I really don't want them to do that. I love the Contender Series, and this isn't just a me thing, like, do it for me. Their ratings show that Contender Series is very profitable, and anything that's profitable to the UFC and gains in notoriety for not only their business, but the fighters that are going to in turn grow their business in the future, it seems like that would be a good idea to keep around. But Dana White said some interesting things about what they're doing with the space that they filmed the Contender Series in. And it seems to me like that Dana White wants to move back toward doing The Ultimate Fighter, which is a more reality TV based, get to know these guys on a 6 to 9 month basis, watch their struggles in the house, the cream rises to the top, someone gets a contract. Whereas the Contender Series is more of a one fight deal, or one fight, expose. You get a little bit of backstory, you get in there and fight, you hope to win a contract. And 3 or 4 of those contracts have gone out in one night before. And, the Ultimate Fighter is based around the fact that one person's going to get that 6-figure contract. Now, people will get fights in the UFC and get UFC contracts off of that show without winning. But the Contender Series, to me, is, again, it just, to me, more personable, and easier to relate to on a week-to-week basis, because you're not getting the same story every single time. Actually, you're not getting the same story ever. These are all individuals from around the world that are coming in and fighting for that right to become a UFC fighter. So you're exposed to a lot more faces, a lot more stories. It keeps it interesting. And I love The Ultimate Fighter too. I love it as well. But it looks like Dana wants to use that space for The Ultimate Fighter. He had talked about bringing in Invicta, which is a women's MMA promotion, to use that space as a, week-by-week basis fight central location to hold their fights, which again would be interesting. I would like that, but I hope it's not all at the expense of the Tuesday Night Contender Series. And it doesn't seem like Dana wants to get rid of it. It just seems like as of right now, the prospects aren't there to move forward at this time. So we'll see going forward if that's going to be something that they can hopefully get back to and maybe in early next year and just restart the season. Because I think this was season 3 or 2. I think this was season 2. And I would love to see a season 3 because I know the part of the reason I cover MMA and part of the reason I love to talk about MMA is because of the stories that are involved with this sport. From, guys like Cowboy Cerrone to, and we always talk about Francis Ngannou, but it's just a great story, to Ray Borg talking about his kids and why he fights, and, just anybody you can think of. I mean, Conor McGregor, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Dustin Poirier. At 155, the stories are amazing. And even some of the stories that aren't so triumphant, some of the stories like the John Jones story or the DC story, which he's amazing. He's been triumphant in every single category of his life except 2 people or 3 people. The third person, Cael Sanderson, wrestling days. But in any of those stories, that's part of the reason that we identify with fighters, not because they are the best in the cage sometimes. I mean, Nate Diaz, for the last 10 years, Nate Diaz in his last couple of fights and his last 3 fights has been amazing. Has been a world beater. But you go back a decade, and that says enough right there that he's been fighting in the last decade. But Nate Diaz over the last decade's a 500 fighter. That's not why people relate to him. The wins and losses aren't as important as these stories attached to every fighter. Conor McGregor alluded to it in his interviews. The wins and losses, unless you're fighting for a belt, for the strap, not really that consequential. How many losses does Cowboy Cerrone have? 13? That guy is a fan favorite. Like, people love him. People love Cowboy Cerrone. Every time he fights, you're tuning in. I'm tuning in every time Cowboy fights. To this day, if Clay Guida fights, if Matt Brown's coming back from retirement and Matt Brown fights, I'm there to see it. Now, it does add a little intrigue when a guy like Khabib is 27-0, or, you see a guy like Darren Till who was 16-0 before his first defeat. Like, when guys have that crazy high record, regardless of what the matchup is, that's intriguing in its own right. But then you have these guys with those records and a story behind them that overcomes so many different obstacles, and all these fighters do. That's what makes these things special. That's what makes this sport the most personable, I think, identifiable sport on the world. Not because everybody in the world is a fighter physically, but I think everyone on the planet fights for something, regardless if it's fighting for a raise of their job, fighting for their marriage, fighting for their kids, fighting for their friends to help them with any kind of, situation they're in. People are fighters at the end of the day. We scrap, we claw, we do everything we can to try to make our lives and the people around us, their lives, better. So when you talk about, in a most identifiable sense, these people represent us. Physically, obviously in the cage, they do things that we can't. But the mental fortitude, the discipline, the ability to perform when asked, and sometimes you don't feel the best. All those things we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Maybe not at that level, maybe in a different way, but we, in turn, are fighters. Like I said, maybe not physically, but in other ways. So it's so easy to relate to these guys and ladies, of course. So please, my whole message, please don't take the Contender Series away. Please don't do that. Because while they're not the superstars yet at the top tier, they're not the Conors, they're not the Khabibs, they're not John Jones yet. You guys don't remember those guys had their start somewhere too. Can you imagine? And I go back and watch Conor's Cage Warrior days, and I've watched John in small promotions before. But can you imagine if this type of technology was out when those guys were coming up? The amount of stardom, I mean, Conor created it for himself, but the amount of stardom that could be built behind a guy like Khabib in the Tuesday Night Contender Series, these stories are meant to be told. So if you tell them correctly, you're going to build that next generation of stars when guys like Khabib and Conor and John and Ronda, when she was on top, those people leave. You have that built-in base to then rise to the top, another batch of superstars. So This show is very important. I hope the UFC doesn't do away with it. It is a grassroots, person to person. It's easily identifiable to people like me, and it gives me goosebumps just talking about it. So please don't do away with it, Dana. Please, Uncle Dana, please. I'm gonna need you to. By the way, Uncle Dana, while we're talking, just go ahead and slide me that internship this fall. Yeah, I can work in content. I can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of video editing. You know what I'm saying? You scratch my back. You know what I'm saying? I got you. I got you. Just go ahead and slide me that email when you get a chance. AJ says, hashtag Team Diaz. Dude, there's a lot of Team Diaz now, but AJ is one of the first, man. AJ's is an OG, a 209 native. Everybody, you know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to be Team Diaz, but not everybody lived in that 209 life. So my man AJ knows what it's about. Okay. We'll do this. This will probably be the last segment of today's show, and it's not even like a huge segment, but I have to talk to you guys about what's going on with all these cards coming up. Because to be honest, I'm excited for 3 cards right now: 244, 243, and Cowboy and Justin Gaethje. Those are my 3 that I'm readily excited for. To be honest, it's been so underutilized and not talked about. We have a women's championship fight this Saturday. We have Weili Zhang and Jessica Andrade fighting this Saturday. That's a massive card. Excuse me. By the way, obviously Habib and Dustin Poirier is on there too. So 242, 243, 244, and then Cowboy and Justin Gaethje. Those are my big fights right now. I'm not even including the I don't know, 8 or 9 that I'm looking at right now, and I'm going to show you guys that are coming up. So let's just take a look at the events coming up and how big of just back-to-back bookings the UFC's got going on right here. I don't know how they're going to sell, but let's just take a look. So we have Jessica Andrade and Weili Zhang. This fight is in China. This is for the first available, possibly the first Chinese champion in the UFC. This would be the first one ever in the UFC. So this is a huge, huge fight. Regardless of if they're big names, if people in the United States understand how good Weili Zhang is or how good Jessica Andrade is. Obviously, she dumped Rose on her head and knocked her unconscious. Pretty damn good. Weili Zhang, very, very good. Defensively, outstanding. Strike output, insane. If she wins this title, if Weili Zhang wins this title, and the entire country of China is behind her, you're talking about eyeballs on eyeballs coming to the UFC. This is a huge, huge fight for the UFC, for Chinese MMA. It's a big fight. I think the last time I watched a UFC China card was when Bisping got knocked dead by Kelvin Gastelum. All right, so this guy right here, my boy Anthony Hernandez, he is another Sacramento fighter who I've had my eye on as far as like up-and-coming guys. He was on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, won his fight, and then I think he lost his debut in a decision. Let's actually look, Let's see how he lost his last fight. Sub. Okay, he got submitted in the first round. So he's a young guy. I think he's 25. So he's got a great career ahead of him, obviously. I watched him on the Dana White Contender Series. I went back and watched some of his local promotion fights. He's a dangerous dude. Now, this June Park, I haven't seen. It looks like it's his debut in the UFC. The Iron Turtle versus Fluffy. Yikes. Nicknames are a little rough in this fight, but skills are not. I think that's going to be a great fight. Obviously, I'm picking my boy Anthony. I'm trying to think of other name-worthy fighters on this card. You got Andre Sukumtat, best known for losing to Sean O'Malley. Andre Soccer Mom. Obviously, he's a great competitor. Throws insane volume in his strikes and throws power behind that as well. Let's look at the main card. Li Jingliang. I've called some of his fights on my live stream reaction before. Obviously, the championship fight. Mark De La Rosa. That's a big fight for him coming up. Not going to be the most name-worthy fighters, but obviously a lot of Chinese fighters on this card. Again, this is huge for the country. It's huge for the UFC. It's a win-win there. Obviously, there's a lot of issues going on in the country over there right now, but Obviously prayers that all the fighters and people running the event stay safe, but that's a big card. And like I said, if Weili Zhang wins that fight, that's a whole new audience base the UFC's just tapped into. They're building a performance center out there. They're becoming global, and what better way to do it than to have the upset right there? Now, obviously, Brazilian fans love their champions just as much. I mean, so much so that they were telling Conor McGregor when he was in Brazil doing press that he wasn't going to make it back to the States. Obviously, Chael had to be holed up in a hotel while he was filming The Ultimate Fighter because of his issues with Vanderlei Silva. So these fans are just as passionate, and you have Jessica Andrade as their champion, and she's an absolute tank. So I don't know which way to go with that. If I'm gonna have to make picks like right now off the bat, I'm gonna say Jessica Andrade gets it done, either by decision or TKO. But Weili Zhang is no one to be underestimated, and she could very well pull off this win. But yeah, just looking through, and we're not gonna go through every single card, but just looking through, we have UFC 242 in 2 weeks, an insane card. Obviously, the headliner, a huge fight, huge implications. Khabib, Dustin Poirier. Dustin came out today and said the winner should very well take on Tony Ferguson, not Conor McGregor. I don't know if he really has a choice. It looks like Conor is angling toward that rematch with Khabib if he wins, and with Dustin if he wins. And UFC is going to do what's best for business, and it really sucks for Tony, man. I hope Tony gets the fight between the winner of these two. I hope, but it's just the UFC is a machine, and when they find promotion dollars in a fighter, just like Conor is needed in that division, I wouldn't be surprised if Conor gets the jump again. I'm not saying that's what I want. I thoroughly want Tony to fight the winner of this, and I would love for it to be the Tony Khabib matchup because we've missed out on it 4 times. It's been 4 times that we haven't seen that fight, but we have to see it. We have to see it before both guys retire. So that's an interesting matchup, obviously, and it has implications. Say Khabib wins, he goes on and fights Tony. Say Dustin wins, you have possibly the immediate rematch with Khabib and Tony fighting someone like Conor or anybody at 155 that he hasn't fought already. But let's check out the card. You have Edson Barboza, Paul Felder. That's a banger. Islam, I think that's either Khabib's cousin, Makhachev. I think that's his cousin. I know he trains out of AKA, and he's part of Eagles MMA with Khabib. So I think that's his cousin. He's a dog. That's a hard fight for Ramos. Curtis Blades fighting. A lot of Muslim fighters on this card. Obviously, it being in Abu Dhabi, you're going to see that. Magomed, yep. But the early prelims and prelims. Bilal Muhammad, not anything that crazy jumps off the card there, but that main card, especially those last 2 fights, are really, really good fights. And even the Barboza and Paul Felder fight have some weight behind them in that lightweight division. So that's another massive card there. And then, boom, right after that, you have Cowboy and Justin Gaethje. And that fight's insane. Obviously, the winner of that fight, Conor McGregor, talking about he wanted to fight, or he was supposed to be in line to fight Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje been calling for that fight. I'd love to see that too. But you see this lightweight division, all these 4 guys right here, and then you include Paul Felder, Edson Barboza, Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson. That division is stacked. Yikes! That division is a train wreck of just killers that you do not want to see, and they're just going head to head. It seems like every week. And then you have, another one just right behind it. Jeremy Stevens, Yair Rodriguez. Yair hasn't fought in a long time. Going to be fighting in Mexico City. That's pretty much a home game for Yair. Jeremy Stevens coming off the loss to Jose Aldo. That'll be a big fight between those 2 guys. I don't think there's going to be a lot of grappling in that fight. Yair throws insane techniques and crazy explosive knees and kicks and capoeira and all types of different combinations, and Jeremy Stevens got one of the best chins on the planet. Gonna walk forward, throw bombs. So that'll be a barn burner. Then you have Hermanson and Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier coming off a win against Anderson Silva. Again, dynamite in his hands. At 185, he looks like a problem. Hermanson obviously a problem there too. That's gonna be a home fight, home field advantage fight for Hermanson too. So, just one after the other, guys. Just bang, 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 back to back to back. Insane fights. And then obviously 243, Whitaker Adesanya, probably going to be the biggest fight in Australian history. It doesn't matter really who wins that fight, for the company's sake. That's a massive fight. Obviously, I think the company would much rather, or would be more marketable for Adesanya to win, because then you have the John Jones deal going, and then you have, Adesanya with that super hype train behind him. But ladies and gentlemen, Robert Whitaker's that dude. I think people have forgotten because of the health issues he's had and the war he went through with Yoel both times. That dude is almost impossible to beat. At 185, insane cardio, insane ability to, volume strike with power, and, always moving forward, staying right in your face. Doesn't give you room to grapple, doesn't give you room to get off long shots. His takedown defense is insane. Yoel couldn't take him down and hold him down, and that's a problem. So I'm not going to offer a pick on that fight yet, but just know that fight is that's box office. That's insane. And then you have Joanna coming back to fight Michelle Waterson. Joanna, again, had a little rough stretch there against 2 losses to Rose and then a loss at 125 to Valentina Shevchenko. None of those losses are anything to be ashamed of. Those are 2 losses to Valentina, who was the 125 champ, and Rose, who made, an insane stride in 115 and could very well have been argued that she was winning the fight against Andrade until she was tossed on her head like a sack of potatoes. But Joanna, one of the best to ever do it. Michelle Waterson starting to make a resurgence as well in her career. That'll be a great fight. And then, very quietly, you're looking at Chris Weidman's debut at 205 against a young killer in Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes is, I think, undefeated at this point, and if not, he has 1 loss. We'll take a look at the card here, if they have any. I don't even know if they have any info on it yet. That's around your boy's birthday. Yeah, big fights already on that card. Zabit, Magomed Shapirov, Calvin Cater, local guy. I bet that's in Boston. Yep. Chris Weidman, another Northeast guy. Macy Barber, young up-and-coming killer. At 125, I think Macy fights. I think she's undefeated as well, about 20 years old. That's a potential potential superstar you guys are having on your hands right there. Macy Barber could potentially be a superstar, guys. Brendan Allen. So some big fights. This fight right here could be the next challenger at one. If Zabit wins that fight, he could very well challenge next after Alexander Volkanovski at 145. So that's a huge fight. Implications for a next number 1 contender. If, Alexander goes through and wins that fight versus Max, then you're looking at Zabit and Alexander, or, Zabit and Max. But those are the fight cards coming up, guys. Insane month and a half of fights that are kind of going under the radar based off of potential matchups. We already have fire matchups right here on screen. So don't forget about, these fights that are already booked with some big name fighters. Chris Weidman's already booked. Robert Whitaker, Israel Adesanya's booked. Darren Till, Kelvin Gastelum just now booked. But don't let it slip through the cracks that, we have a title fight this weekend. We have some interesting fights coming up with major implications for the company and for divisions. I mean, Khabib, Dustin Poirier, that's one of the biggest fights of the year, and it feels like no one's talking about it, and it's 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away, and it's because these guys are very respectful of each other, obviously, and Khabib is not a guy that's going to go out and make a ton of headlines. He's not fighting Conor, so it's not as much animosity built up, but that is a massive fight. If Dustin Poirier walks away from Abu Dhabi with a win, holy cow, the transformation that guy's had in his career. I mean, he has been through it, been ups and downs at 145, moves to 155, goes on a run, gets beat by Michael Johnson, goes on another run, starts destroying everyone, finally gets his title shot. First title shot, and he's been fighting the UFC for the last decade. I mean, the guy has earned that spot. Not to say Khabib hasn't. Khabib, 27-0, earned that spot. But this fight's insane. Justin Gaethje and Cowboy. Gaethje, they look like the same guy. Gaethje looks like a shaved cowboy. Like, they look like the same dude, and they're going to fight. I would not. I mean, Gaethje keeps telling us that he's going to use his grappling. I haven't seen him do it yet, and I haven't seen him need to since his last loss. He's been knocking fools dead. So who knows, man? That'll be a barn burner. And then obviously, Yair Rodriguez, Jeremy Stevens, barn burner. So that last segment, or this last segment of the show, is just based around the fact that we got some massive cards coming up, and I hope you guys are excited just like I am. But what did we learn today, guys? We learned that we have a massive UFC MSG 244 card, possibly, depending on what they get as the main event, or main and co-main on that. But you have Darren Till and Kelvin Gastelum. I'm assuming that could be a co-main for them. Massive fight. You have Anthony Rumble Johnson coming back to tussle with the big boys at heavyweight. So many potential matchups for him there. So many potential opportunities for him to get back to that title, for possibly a matchup with John Jones, as he alluded to. Possibly a matchup with Stipe. Possibly a matchup with Francis Ngannou. Please. And then just a myriad of cards coming up that are just loaded to the gills with great fights that are, kind of being looked over at the moment. And then lastly, our plea to Uncle Dana. Please, Dana, keep the Contender Series. We love it. We need it. It's going to produce some of the best stars for that next generation, that next decade of fighters that wave that's coming through. It's already produced some big names like Sean O'Malley that are already taking off and have their own fan base. So with that being said, that's our show for today, guys. Quick little 50-minute show. I owed you guys from last week where I kind of rushed out of here, but I wanted to make sure we got everything in that space covered today and not rushed. And we had to upgrade the little overlays and do some things behind the scenes. But, guys, I'm loving being back on the podcast. I love doing this for you guys and for myself. This is fun for me. I love talking about these fights, and while Saturdays I work, so I have to watch them after I work, I love going back and combing through everything for that Saturday and Sunday, and then hopping right back on here Monday and talking to you guys. So we have, obviously, Jessica Andrade and Weili Zhang coming up. That's a 3 a.m. Pacific time card, so I might just have to stay up and watch that one. 3 a.m. Pacific? Yeah, we might do a live stream reaction. It's Saturday at 3 a.m. Pacific. We might do a live stream reaction to that card. If you guys are up for it, let me know. I'll be, trust me, you give me about 2 or 3 of these, I'm up. I'm ready to go. I got energy levels for days. I promise you that. So if you guys want, we'll do a 3 a.m. Pacific live stream right here at the W.A.D.E concept. It'll be the first one we've done in a year and a half, 2 years. And then we can do the same thing for Poirier and Habib. 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we can do that. That's Abu Dhabi time, 11 a.m. We can 100% do that. So I'm down if you guys are. Let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Give me a like on the video if you guys are liking what we're doing here. And tune in Friday. Saturday at 3 a.m. We're going to do a live stream reaction. I just decided right now we're going to do it. I don't give a shit if you guys want it or not. I'm going to be here. If you want to come in and watch, be here with me, I'm here. I'm ready to do it. I want to see how this UFC China card is going to go. I want to see if we can get our first Chinese champion in the UFC. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, subscribe if you're new. Hit that like button if you like what we're doing here. And be with me 3 a.m. Pacific time, Saturday on the 31st. Or if you're on the East Coast, that'll be 6 a.m. Wake up, get the coffee, be here. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.